It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
There has been a pattern of behavior in the past to try to combat the news and the opinions that you hear on this program. We've seen it before. When this show first started broadcasting on a second affiliate out of Russellville, the president, well, what is now the president of the Senate, Jim Hendren, the governor's nephew, at the time he was the majority leader, he scheduled a meeting to speak, which is his right to do. He wanted to speak to one of the Tea Party groups, the Tri-County Tea Party in Pope County and the surrounding counties. And so he did, and he went to Russellville not long after this program was on. I was broadcasting every day, and so I decided to attend. And lo and behold, when I went to this meeting, Senator Hendren was there, and he had a slideshow that I was a part of. He put my photo and picture up on a slideshow and said, was basically trying to prove everything that we say on this program wrong. And in the process, he actually said something that I recorded that actually turned out to be not true when he said that his bill was going to end Medicaid expansion. This was several years ago. And so Senator Hendren, you have to understand something. He has a pattern of trying to combat a limited government conservative message that he obviously disagrees with, because many things that we do on this program expose people who say one thing and do another. And if you are only about red T-shirt, red team, rah, 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 Republican all the time, and you constantly try to cover up what you do that is contrary to what you said, and that's what we are experiencing here. Make no mistake about it. Arkansas is experiencing a cover-up from Republicans. They want to ignore all of the things they do that are directly against, not gray areas, but directly against what they told the people they were going to do. And so we've been exposing that for a long time. Senator Hendren has constantly, and others have been trying to combat it and everything else, and that's fine. He has a right to do that. He has a right to speak. Well, over the last couple of years, Conduit for Action has actually been making the rounds to county Republican committees and been giving presentations. These presentations are sometimes contentious. There are legislators in there that disagree with bringing up, and exposing the Republicans for voting for tax increases or growing government or whatever. That's not the case with everybody, but that's just the way it is. Look, this is a messy process. We believe in freedom of speech. We believe in competing in the arena of ideas and everything else. Well, Senator Hendren decided to go. I believe this was the Benton County Republican Party recently, and he addressed Conduit specifically. This is what he said.
As you said, as I said earlier, I spent a lot of time in the military, and I've been overseas to the Middle East 5 times in the last 5 or 6 years. And one of the most disturbing things for us in the military is when we have what we call insider attacks. And this happened a lot in Afghanistan. We would have people that we were training, Afghani nationals that we were training, who would put on the uniform of the coalition, who would take our supplies and our food and our training and then walk in with a suicide bomb or walk in and start shooting our own guys. I mean, it's bad enough to get shot by the enemy, but to get shot by your own team, it's inexcusable. It's so hard to understand. Well, we don't have anybody obviously shooting each other, but here's what we have in our Republican Party. In addition to an energized opponent who's found opponents for every one of our incumbents, we have some folks in our party who have put on our uniform, who've said they're Republicans, and after the primary is over, when we're supposed to come together, are continuing to attack our people. And I'm telling you, we've worked too hard to let that kind of stuff go on.
Stop.
I've lost some primaries. And
all right, I'm gonna stop and go here. So that's Senator Jim Hendren, and he later mentions Conduit by name. We'll wait and hear for that. But yes, you heard that right. We, according to him, are terrorists. We have been trained by him. We have been given shelter by him. We have been given food by him, and we have been given clothes by him. The red T-shirt, and Then we take the red T-shirt and we go into the camp and we open fire and we shoot our own guys, if you will. Now, obviously, his analogy doesn't hold up completely, and I'm not talking about the more, he admits, obviously we're not talking about actual guns. His I'm sorry, I haven't been given any conservative training by Senator Hendren or the likes of the big government Republican establishment, okay? I haven't. Suicide bombers in a tent. I tell you, that's pretty wild, right? Suicide bombers in a tent. So Senator Hendren makes the comparison of people who are trying to speak out for limited government, trying to expose, what the problems are. And he essentially says, he's doing this following Conduit, and this is fine. Like, I support that. I mean, let's have the ideas, and let's. I'm not afraid of just getting as many ideas as we can out there, honestly. But I will say, using that kind of military terrorist comparison, I think that kind of ruins the Republican brand. I think that's maybe not a good thing to do. But hey, you know what? To each his own. Democrats are energized, he says. Democrats are energized. They found an opponent for everybody out there. Is that the only thing that matters? The Democrats are energized, so we must what? Just put our heads down and, just look, it's not like there aren't good Republicans out there. It's not like there aren't good Republicans. There are good Republicans who vote really well. But there are also, quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, there are Republicans out there that you just, when you look at what's happened, when you look at the broad course of events, you're just like, you know what? It is what it is. And there's not a lot of enthusiasm. If you want to know why there's a lack of enthusiasm in the Republican Party right now, it's because we have Republicans that have violated the platform repeatedly, and instead of admitting to it and addressing it, we are sweeping it under the rug. I said this the other day, Look, he wants to take his, his Afghan analogy or whatever, or terrorist analogy, or that's fine. But folks, you got to look at what happens when an organization fails to meet its own standards and then doesn't admit to it. Eventually, people just lose interest altogether. When you actually are speaking the truth, people will just start to lose interest altogether. And I'm afraid that may be what may happen here eventually. I don't think anytime soon. I think the Republicans are going to be fine in Arkansas. All right, keep going here. Senator Hendren goes on.
It's not been easy, but you do the right thing and you get behind the winner and the nominee, and you do what you got to do to keep moving the ball down the field. But we've got groups. Let me give you some specific examples, and I think you all know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to be shy. It's Conduit.
There we go. Terrorists.
They have given money.
We're terrorists.
$5,400 to Charlene Fight's libertarian opponent, and she in a fall election after the primary. They have spent hours attacking our Republican nominee Bob Ballinger in a Senate race against a Democrat and a libertarian.
All right, stop on that one. First of all, the fall after the primary money thing, I need to look into that. And that's number one. But honestly, are we really going to be given credit for spending an hour or two on Bob Ballinger this week in total? Are you really going to put that on us, Jim? Honestly, come on. Let's take responsibility for what we said. Okay, this is what Bob Ballinger said. Go ahead, Joe. I know we're running short on time, but we have to backtrack here. You're honestly going to say we're attacking Bob Ballinger? I'm pretty sure Bob Ballinger brought this on himself. Listen.
Let me say this. I am really disappointed for a profession that gets beat up as much as we do, where they, only good lawyers are dead lawyer, right? And, all that stuff, right? For somebody who gets beat up as much as we do, for people to just beat up the legislature. My friends in the legislature are servants. They not one of them up there right now is benefiting from being in this business. They have set themselves.
So, Stop. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's not on us. Of course, I'm going to cover that because it's big news. And by the way, the involuntary laughter that was unavoidable. There's no way you could contain the laughter. That should tell you something, Republicans. That should tell us all what the people are observing, what people who are in the know, who follow politics, what they think. And they're starting to think you guys are only in it for yourselves. And that there's a lot that we don't know about what goes on at the Marble Palace. You know what? If anything, this has always been about trying to get people interested in more of what goes on at the Marble Palace than they are about what happens in Washington, D.C. And I think that may be about to happen. I think there are more people realizing what is going on down there than ever before, and that is a threat to the power and establishment at the Marble Palace. Senator Hendren goes on in his speech of comparing Conduit to terrorists in Afghanistan. Listen.
In this election season, they have had the Libertarian opponent against our Republican nominee for governor on their show numerous times, and they continue to trash our Republican nominee for governor.
Stop. You mean your uncle? Your uncle, Asa, right? Okay. I've had Mark West on the program a couple of times. Numerous times. I don't know how many is numerous. What I have, I've had him on the program before he ran for governor. I've had him on the program numerous times. So what? We are talking about ideas here. We're talking about ideas. And if you have somebody who claims to be for popular ideas with the voters, like limited government and everything else, and then you have the opposite of that, or maybe a lukewarm version of that, are the people not entitled to see if there are possible alternatives? And I haven't told anybody to go out there and vote for Mark West. I've simply interviewed him. I guess Senator Hendren just wants us to rename the program to Republican Shill Radio. This is Republican Shill Radio. We'll say whatever the red T-shirts at the top of the heap tell us to say. That's not who we are. That's never who we're going to be. Because essentially what is being expected of us is to participate in a deception, and that is never going to happen. Keep going.
They have called this task force that I've talked about, that we spent a year trying to figure out how to cut taxes, a farce. Yeah. They called the medical reform task force that I chaired, that we spent a year making reforms that saved the state hundreds of millions of dollars, literally over $800 million, a farce.
Stop.
And then they want to...
Man, that's the greatest pun we've ever made. That has had the biggest staying power to frustrate those down there than ever, the task force. I'm telling you, it really has. They can't stand that. Yes, I called the healthcare task force a farce. It was a farce. It's proven to be a farce. Sir, you can talk about saving $800 million from traditional Medicaid, those who truly need it, all you want. You can talk all about that. That was not the goal of the task force, was it? The task force's goal was to end Medicaid expansion, according to you. But then, in the bill, it actually said it was to keep it. But then you said, here's where the bill says it ends Medicaid expansion. I mean... So excuse me if I thought that the tax task force was going to be a farce. And by the way, I can't wait to eat crow. If you guys actually do what you're proposing to do, that means that government's gotten smaller, and that's great. And something tells me if I hadn't called it a task farce, it would have been a task farce. And by the way, we still don't know if it isn't one, because we don't, the recommendation versus the bill, we still have a long way to go with that. Is there any more of that? What else does he say? Hang on a second.
Come and tell us they're on our team. Well, I hope that this county committee, because this is where the Republican Party, I believe, was built and began for this state, starts to take a stand against that kind of activity.
Meaning don't let them speak.
To have people who want to do that come and speak to county committees, I think is inexcusable. Yep. It needs to be stopped.
Got to squash the speech.
I'm just telling you that I have absolutely no problem with people tearing each other up in the primaries. That's the way the process works. If you disagree and want to light up somebody in a primary, knock yourself out. But as a team, when the primary's over, we've got Democrats in the legislature right now because the Libertarian took so many votes from the Republican that the Democrat won. That's what this kind of foolishness that we allow to happen causes.
Stop.
So
we're out of time. Real quick, Libertarians are awful, according to him, essentially. Or they're not Republicans. They're not red T-shirt. Okay, don't let them speak, okay? Got to stop them. Don't want to have these debates after a primary. I mean, why not? Why elect here's my question. Why elect Republicans if they're going to pass Democrat policy? Votes matter and truth matters. That's what Conduit News is about. That's what we're going to continue to be about, regardless of what the President pro temp of the Senate says about us and compares us to terrorists. Let me say this. There is more damage done to, quote, our party by those that deceive than Conduit News could ever do, or any Conduit organization. They would do nothing. We choose not to go along. You know what? The idea of attempting to work is a good idea, to attempting to act in good faith, to negotiate in good faith when it comes to difficult decisions about conservative policy or Republican policy. But eventually with this crew, let me tell you what you get. You get two options. One, you can go along with our deceptions, or two, you can become their enemy. You can go along with their deceptions and never call them out when they fail to meet their own standards, grossly so. By a lot, not by a little. We're not talking about gray areas. Or you can become their enemy. And with those choices, if you're being asked to participate in a deception, would you do this? Most people are raised to think that that's a wrong thing to do. So,